Listen to what Thierry Henry says.
When we knew that Mbappé was going there, how is he going to balance that team?
He saw this coming. People thought Kylian Mbappé would arrive at Real Madrid and dominate, but it has been the complete opposite.
Frankly, the Real Madrid players will just want to get on the plane and go home, but the rituals have to be observed.
It can be Kylian, it can be Mbappe. Mbappe comes into Real Madrid and we all thought, and I think rightfully so, we thought this is going to elevate Real Madrid because he would be able to check this ego at the door given the fact that Real Madrid were successful without him. They didn't need him. And what he has come in, whether he intended it to be the case or not, he has wrecked this team.
Too many stars, too many egos. Real Madrid is slowly collapsing in a way that feels uncontrollable.
I think it's less to do with the tactics and more to do with what you guys talk about, the player power. This Real Madrid group right now is unmanageable, in my opinion.
People thought it was just the words of a washed-up pundit.
But it was like in the final third, they lacked the clarity and they lacked the capacity to make the right decisions. Almost like they weren't aware of the magnitude of this game. They've given up any chance of winning the league title.
But now it sounds like a prophecy.
Is that a player problem that they didn't like his playing style? You mentioned that the players kind of rule things there
100%
a bit, and Florentino Perez gives them that power, the president of the club. But maybe that's the larger issue.
No Mbappé, there's party.
Nacho raises the Champions League trophy in the air.
With Mbappé, there's a dictator.
The whole world belongs to me.
Real Madrid showed signs of revival without him. The fluidity and freedom in their play came back. But the moment he returned, everything started to fall apart again.
And you look and see, win against Celta, no Mbappe. Win against City, no Mbappe. Win against Elche, no Mbappe. Win against City away, no Mbappe. Win against Atletico Madrid, no Mbappe in the starting 11. Mbappe comes back. Mallorca 2, Real Madrid 1.
39 goals. 6 assists, directly involved in 55% of Real Madrid's goals in La Liga this season. A level of burden never even seen at the peak of Cristiano Ronaldo.
Here's Vinícius, back to Mbappé, who lines up the shot. Mbappé! It is another absolute screamer at the Bernabeu this afternoon.
And yet, it all means nothing if Real Madrid cannot win anything.
It's a difficult one because he's still scoring the goals, he's still doing good things. It's just they haven't won anything this season.
So let me ask you this, is Mbappé the problem, or is everything around him being distorted to serve him?
Has Mbappe ever been a team player? So he's never been part of a team, and if there's one thing footballers need when they're not at their best and they're going through a tough time, is the teammates. But if you make yourself completely separate from everybody else, it does affect the way everybody else around you plays for you, looks at you, and holds you to a different standard.
I think sometimes in the life I'm too competitive, it's good to be competitive.
When Kylian Mbappé is not playing, Real Madrid don't just look smoother, they win convincingly.
Real Madrid, opportunity for the break, and he's around Donnarumma, and scores! And Real Madrid from the breakaway, check the lead.
Vinícius will take the shot on! And he will find the back of the net with a beautiful strike.
They rediscover their rhythm in La Liga and even defeat Manchester City in the Champions League. These are controlled performances where the ball moves quickly, chances are created from multiple angles, and the team functions as a unified structure. Vinícius Júnior finds his scoring touch again. Federico Valverde thrives.
What really impressed me tonight was the chemistry they had. They were feisty, they were running for each other, they were fighting for each other. I mean, Vinícius Júnior was all over the place, defending, helping out. They were unpredictable, and it takes those nights in the Champions League, those special games, to pull that stuff out of very special players.
Everything comes together into a balanced system that echoes the Real Madrid of previous eras. But the moment Mbappé returns, everything starts to collapse again.
Real Madrid suffered today to lose 2-1. Are absolutely embarrassing. And Mbappe just turns into this player that looks like he doesn't know how to play the 9. He doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know what runs to make. He doesn't know anything. He literally forgets how to play football when he plays for Real Madrid.
The tempo drops, attacking sequences begin to funnel in one direction, and the system becomes predictable. The result is no longer controlled wins, but struggling performances that often end in defeat. Mbappé still scores, still produces those explosive runs, but the key issue remains. Real Madrid are playing worse.
Have a player like Mbappé, that is true, that is an amazing player, an amazing number 9, but I expect much more about him, not just scoring goals, because you are seeing that in 2 seasons is not enough to win titles. And
yes, he is still shining in his own way. But look back at the past, he still scored over 40 goals in a season for PSG and dominate the League One, but couldn't win the Champions League. Yet, the moment he left, they started winning everything.
It didn't never work for Paris Saint-Germain for years. And it worked this season because Kylian wasn't there and everybody was spot on to do the job. And that's the difference. And
they are no longer dependent on a single individual. Instead, they function as a synchronized collective with coordinated movement, effective pressing, and consistent intensity throughout the game. And even Luis Enrique has spoken about this, suggesting that PSG actually perform better without Mbappé.
Creo que fui muy valiente la temporada pasada cuando os dije que pensaba que íbamos a tener mejor equipo en ataque y en defensa. Yo sigo pensando que somos mejores en ataque y en defensa y los números están ahí. Nos hubiera encantado tener a Kylian y los jugadores seguro, por lo que le tenían a Kiki, pero creo que el equipo está respondiendo a un nivel espectacular. Os dije que me encantaría que hubiera, en vez de un jugador que marque 40 goles, 4 que marcaran 12 cada uno. Ya que han superado con creces esos números y invitamos a los demás, y ese es nuestro objetivo como equipo, mejorar.
I know you might believe Real Madrid have deeper issues behind this chaos. But we have to face the reality that despite Kylian Mbappe's incredible numbers, they are reflecting the exact opposite. Real Madrid are regressing with him in the team. Mbappé is now like the king of stats, but the ghost of trophies.
I was going to be nice, but I'm not going to be nice. It's trophyless for me. It's trophyless. I don't see this team being able to turn it around.
Mbappé has always been a different level compared to the rest of his generation. Before arriving in Madrid, he never had to prove who he was.
Thuram! Mbappé! Oh, wow! He is an awesome force of nature! Brutal and brilliant!
Oh, brilliant skills from Mbappé. It's 3-0. Sensational from Kylian Mbappé.
He was already one of the best players in the world. A player capable of deciding games with pace, finishing, and explosive individual moments. At Paris Saint-Germain and on the international stage, he was used to being the centre of everything, used to having the entire system revolve around him. That is why when he arrived at Madrid, the expectation was never about whether he could perform. It was about how completely he would dominate.
Me voy a hacer 1, 2, 3 y vamos a decir juntos a la Madrid, como una gran familia. 1, 2, 3, a la Madrid!
If Mbappe lands Madrid, Barcelona doesn't have to get ready. The world has to get ready.
But reality did not begin that way. When Kylian Mbappé put on the shirt of Real Madrid, there was no fairy tale start. The early games showed a very different version. Disconnected touches, movements out of sync with his teammates, and at times he almost disappeared from the system.
Could be a chance for Real Madrid to get back into the game. It's Kylian Mbappé, and Kylian makes the save. It's Luis Perez. Cross comes in, Mbappé!
The pressure arrived quickly. The media began dissecting every small detail in this game, while the fans started losing patience with a star who had yet to make a clear impact. At Real Madrid, the window to adapt barely exists. Everything is pushed to the extreme.
If you're Mbappe, you're imbalanced because, well, basically they're saying I'm not playing well. That's embarrassing for Mbappe. If you're supposed to be this superstar.
But things were starting to click after a few matches. Goals began to come.
Kept alive now by Bellingham. It's Mbappé coming on and scoring! Kylian Mbappé!
First in isolated moments, then in consistent scoring runs. From single strikes to braces, hat-tricks, and eventually decisive performances in the Champions League.
La pelota de Trent Alexander-Arnold con el primer control. Consigue romper a Íñigo Leque. Arranca la conducción. Nadie le puede parar. Nadie le frena. El último recorte.
Adaptation was no longer the issue. Kylian Mbappé overcame it through sheer individual quality. From doubt, Kylian Mbappé quickly rose into a state of dominance. Around 40 goals in his first season, nearly 14 in the Champions League, and a central role in every major attacking situation. A near instant transformation. From a question mark into the answer.
Ballon d'Or winner next year. You never write off this man. I mean, he's just so good. He looks electric. Seems to be playing with a different sort of confidence at the moment. I know he scored a lot of goals last season, but he's actually playing well and scoring goals this season.
Mbappé did not create his resurgence by integrating into the system. He did it by taking over games on his own, through decisive individual actions. And when one player becomes the solution to every problem, that is when the team starts depending on how he solves them. From the very beginning, Thierry Henry raised a clear question. When Mbappé joins Real Madrid, how will this team find balance? And the answer is now unfolding in real time. It is shaping the way the club operates. Henry also pointed out another concern, Mbappe's laziness of work rate in the number 9 role.
Who's going to make the run in behind? Who's going to try to go? It's him. It's Bellingham going, not your number 9. Again, who's making the box? Him again. And I think there is a little frustration, and this one for me is actually, look at him. Look at your 9. Look at on the other side. Same. Your 9 is not going. Your 10-ish is going. And I know it can happen sometimes, but not all the time.
But the issue here is not theoretical. It lies in how Kylian Mbappé operates on the pitch. He's not a player who drops deep into build-up, does not consistently hold central positions to act as a link, and does not contribute enough in pressing to maintain cohesion with the rest of the team.
When I see a player standing still, or maybe slow walking, when your team is trailing 3-1 and there's an opportunity to attack the 18-yard box, and that is your job as a striker to go and score goals, and yet you're just standing still, not moving, not participating, the game is just going on around you, that's troubling.
Mbappé remains the biggest threat on the pitch, but that does not make Real Madrid function smoothly. Instead, it turns him into a solution used when the system starts to break down. And when one player becomes the escape option for the entire system, the next step is almost inevitable. The system begins to change to serve him.
He's going to showcase what he can do because he doesn't want to be 5th on this feature. No, he wants to be in the top 5, he wants to be in the top 2 because he wants to be considered up there in terms of one of the best strikers within this squad and someone that is reliable because you just said it. What's the best ability? Availability. Right. And if he's available and he's scoring, he can do it. The problem is when you have someone who's at the top that's so good and so heavily reliant, it's almost impossible to look away from him.
At Real Madrid, that shift did not happen overnight. It happened gradually. The ball started to find Mbappé more often, and attacking patterns were increasingly designed to place him in decisive positions. Over time, it stopped being a choice. It became the team's instinct. The imbalance becomes clear when placing Kylian Mbappé alongside Vinícius Júnior. Both naturally drift toward the left flank, searching for the same spaces to maximise their strengths. This does not create complementarity, it creates overlap. Two of the best players in the world, yet constantly occupying the same zone. It feels more like a glitch than a calculated tactical structure.
Still think there's big questions as to whether or not Vinny and Mbappe can play together.
They both want to shift, like you mentioned, they both want to shift to that left side. That hasn't worked. It didn't work last season for them to win multiple trophies.
Behind them, Jude Bellingham becomes the one force to adjust the most. He drops deeper, moves wider, and constantly shifts roles to maintain balance. But when a player has to repeatedly leave his natural position, it is usually a sign that the system is being bent to compensate.
But you saw Bellingham coming off, and he's feeling it. Yeah. No goals. No goals. This guy, I can't remember, but this time last year, he probably had, I don't know, 8 or 10. That shows you the difference. And it's, okay, he might not be playing as well. And Real Madrid clearly are not playing as well as a team.
None of them are playing incorrectly. Mbappé is still doing what he does best. Vinícius remains true to his style. Bellingham keeps trying to connect everything. But when all of them exist within a distorted structure, the question is no longer who is right or wrong. It becomes what happens when pressure rises and that system is pushed into decisive moments. And once the system is stretched to a certain point, the outcome becomes inevitable. Shut down one key link and the entire structure stalls. When Mbappé is contained, Real Madrid almost lose their final edge. The attacks still happen, but they lack the final touch, the decisive spark needed to turn them into clear chances. What stands out is that this is not about a lack of quality. The pitch is still filled with top players, names capable of making the difference. The issue lies in the habit that has been formed. Get the ball to Kylian Mbappé and let him handle the rest. For a period, it worked. It even worked extremely well. But once opponents began to adapt, once they organised to lock down his space, that approach started to lose its edge. And when the familiar solution stops working, the real problem is exposed. There is no alternative. No secondary structure, no clear attacking route capable of creating the same impact. The system does not collapse because of a lack of quality. It stalls because it has grown used to operating in only one direction. And when that direction is blocked, everything stops with it. At this point, the issue is no longer about tactics or structure. It becomes something much simpler. Mbappé is not doing anything wrong. In fact, he is doing everything too well. He receives, creates, scores, and constantly solves situations that would normally require an entire team. But that is exactly what creates the paradox. When one player keeps becoming the answer to every problem, the rest of the team gradually loses the habit of solving them together. Collective combinations fade. Variety disappears. Everything starts to narrow at one individual. In the short term, it brings results, but in the long term, it reshapes how the entire team thinks and operates on the pitch. It is the price a team pays when it becomes too dependent on individual brilliance. To understand the issue more clearly, just look at how other elite forwards operate within their systems. You don't even have to look far. Take Karim Benzema, Mbappé's predecessor at Real Madrid. With Benzema, the value was never just about goals. He constantly dropped deep, linked midfield with attack, created passing triangles, and allowed the entire system to function smoothly. He was not just the final point. He was the connector that made everything work. Meanwhile, the player most often compared directly with Mbappé, Erling Haaland, represents a completely different model. He doesn't need many touches or deep involvement in build-up, but he is always in the right place at the decisive moment. He doesn't change the system, he optimises it. Kylian Mbappé is different. He does not focus on connecting play like Karim Benzema, nor does he simply optimise a role like Erling Haaland. Instead, he optimises moments. Receive the ball, create disruption, and solve the situation on his own terms. That difference creates a fundamental gap. Benzema makes the system function, Haaland perfects the system, Mbappé often operates outside of it. And when a player constantly breaks the script to create moments, the question is no longer how good he is. It becomes how much of its structure the system around him can still maintain. In the end, the issue is not whether Mbappé is good enough. It is how his brilliance has quietly reshaped the way Real Madrid operates. They still have elite players, they still have the quality to win, but they are gradually losing the habit of solving problems together as a collective. Kylian Mbappé does not make Real Madrid weaker in the conventional sense, but when he becomes the solution to too many situations, the team gradually stops searching for other answers. And at the highest level of football, that is a very dangerous trade-off. He has proven that he can decide games on his own. But football was never designed for one player to do that forever. And the final question remains, how far can a team really go when it depends on that for too long? Admit it, watching Real Madrid fall is satisfying.
Pause for the shot! Put the cherry on top! My God!
Oh my God! Oh my God!
I never thought I'd say this, but the ref us. Say the line, Bart! But we have 15 champions.
Knocked out by a second division team in the Copa del Rey.
For the second time and first since 94-95, Real Madrid eliminated by lower league opposition for the first time since the 2021 season. This is a disaster for Real Madrid.
Defeated by their rivals in the Supercopa de España final.
That Barcelona have done it tonight. They are the 2026 Spanish Super Cup winners.
Bringing in Xabi Alonso to restore the winning DNA at the Bernabeu, only for it to end with a dismissal letter. Miracles didn't come packed in his luggage, but failure still follows the script.
Madrid are unhappy, of course they are. It wouldn't be natural if they weren't.
For Mbappé, the real emotion is about to hit them. They're out of the Champions League at the quarter-final stage again, and I can't, Andy, believe the way in which they finished it.
The squad worth hundreds of millions to break records, only for Real Madrid to break the wrong one. Their first trophyless back-to-back season in 16 years.
They're not in the Champions League anymore, Tom. They're not in, well, it's looking unlikely in La Liga to win the title there. They're out of Copa del Rey. Second season now, they've not won a major trophy. How far off they from what we expect to see from Real Madrid?
It's a massive disappointment. The expectations at this club are high, as they should be given the roster that they have and the spend that they have.
For the first time in a long while, no one feels sorry for them. Not because people hate Real Madrid, but because a sense of satisfaction is taking over.
What are
you saying, bro? What? Hey, what? Let me chat to you. What? You trying to get active, bro? Are you trying to get active? What?
No more remontadas, no more of that. They always find a way to survive feeling. Real Madrid have finally become ordinary. No legend, no aura, just pure collapse. For the first time, everything returns to what it truly is. Fairness. The problem isn't just in the defeats, it's in the way we've perceived Real Madrid over the years. Throughout multiple seasons, Real Madrid didn't just win matches, they controlled the entire narrative around those victories.
They prayed for miracles, and miracles arrived! Real Madrid, the team of dreams! Where has that come from? How did that happen?
The Champions League DNA are the mentality of kings, and they always find a way. Phrases repeated enough times to become a kind of collective belief, where everything that happened on the pitch was explained in the same direction. If they won, it was destiny. If they struggled, it was merely the opening act of a comeback. And if they played poorly, no one truly analysed it deeply, because the narrative had already done that job in advance.
How have Real Madrid done this again?
The truth is that they were dead. The only people that believed that Real Madrid still had an opportunity after the 90th minute was the Real Madrid players. Maybe this team, this group of players, this whole club in Champions League is something else. It's something special, something that cannot be touched. They are something special to watch in moments like this.
But this is exactly where things started to go off track. That narrative was no longer just a way of storytelling. It gradually replaced the way football itself was explained. People said Real Madrid controlled matches, but in reality, many times they controlled nothing beyond moments. People said mentality created victories, but in fact, many times it was simply chaos being aromanticized, where disjointed plays and unstructured situations were elevated into symbols of character.
It's about moments. Real Madrid, for example, in this sense, I remember the game they go against Liverpool, and they were 2-0 down, and I saw their faces, I was like, these guys are not worried. And I was saying to the lads, guys, you've seen their faces, like, they're not kind of, we will overcome this situation, don't worry. I couldn't explain. I think it's something you have to live, and when you win it, you realize how tough it is.
And from that point, a distorted logic began to form. When Real Madrid won, it was considered legendary and seen as proof of greatness beyond tactics. When they lost, it was treated as an accident and something not worth analysing. And when they played poorly, everything was immediately covered by a familiar promise that they would eventually find a way, just as they always had. Over time, the narrative no longer ran alongside football, it moved ahead of it and became the lens through which people viewed Real Madrid. When that happened, the real issues almost disappeared from the discussion, not because they did not exist, but because they did not fit the story that had already been constructed. That is why, for a long time, Real Madrid could play without control, could win without truly imposing themselves, and could rely on moments while still being seen as a perfect system. The narrative always came first, and the matches were merely shaped to fit that narrative.
Arsenal's a really good team, so I think they can do really good against Real Madrid. But still, Real Madrid is Real Madrid, so I think they're good.
I think that in London we lost, but in the Bernabeu we win because we are the Real Madrid, and this is the best club in the world.
It is not that Real Madrid lacked quality, but rather that the way they were perceived made everything become immune to analysis. But now, as defeats no longer come as isolated shocks, but instead form a pattern, as those decisive moments no longer arrive at the right time to save them, and as matches no longer bend to the familiar script, that layer of narrative begins to crack. And when it cracks, what is revealed is not a legendary team struck by bad luck, but a team that never truly controlled matches in the way we once believed.
Judging by the football, for the large majority of that game, Bayern can say they walked away from the Bernabeu being better, outplaying Real Madrid, and feeling confident that they can replicate that at home.
When the narrative is no longer strong enough to cover reality, you are forced to return to the most fundamental thing, football. Because beyond all the DNA, the mentality, and the idea that always find a way, there is a very simple truth that Real Madrid cannot avoid. Aura does not press, aura does not build up, aura does not save you from being outplayed for 90 minutes. When the narrative disappears, when those moments no longer arrive at the right time, what remains is structure, system, and the way a team truly operates on the pitch. And that is exactly when Real Madrid's issues, once hidden, begin to show. So if you strip away the story and look only at what is actually happening on the pitch, their real picture starts to emerge.
All right, listen. I understand what he's doing, but even the players also understand that the messaging of him taking the blame ignores some of the issues that this team has.
Now, of course, you want to win it. Of course, you're trying to win it. And of course, you need to win it. But at no point during the game today did we get the feeling that any of those things were true.
Real Madrid's problem is not form, but choice. They have not simply declined in performance. They have deliberately traded away what once made them strong. They have sacrificed their system to serve their superstars. Looking directly at their issues, it is clear that this is a team stuck between two states, control and chaos. They do not truly dictate matches. They exist within them, waiting for individual moments to make the difference. This begins with the way they press and build up play. There is no clear structure. Their pressing actions are often out of sync and lack coordination, which allows opponents to break through the first line of pressure easily and force Real Madrid into a deeper, reactive position. When you fail to control the tempo from the start, you are essentially handing control of the match to your opponent. That problem becomes even more serious in rest defence, which is how the team is organised when they lose possession. Real Madrid currently do not have a defensive foundation stable enough to protect them against transitions. The distances between their lines are stretched, the shape is no longer compact, and every loss of possession carries the risk of a direct counter-attack. This is not just about individual mistakes, but the consequence of a system that is not properly structured.
We have two of the worst superstars in the world. We are disgusting, chat.
That's it, that's full time. Vad din mamma. Vad eran familj. Lära hela en existens. Sen alamatun. Are we surprised? Are we surprised about this team? No. I've had enough. I swear on my life, I've had enough of every single one of these people. I swear on my life, none of them deserve to play for Real Madrid.
Further up the pitch, the situation is no better. Real Madrid's chance creation relies heavily on the individual quality of Kylian Mbappé and Vinícius Júnior, rather than clear attacking structures. They lack consistent attacking patterns with no repeatable combinations and no systematic mechanisms to generate chances. This can work in moments, but over the long term, it is not sustainable, especially against well-organised teams. When Mbappé and Vinícius both operate on the left flank, Real Madrid end up narrowing their own attacking space. They lack a true number 9 to act as an anchor, and they lack width to stretch the opposition's defence. As a result, their attacks become crowded, overlapping, and predictable. That is why, despite having so much talent, they still give off the feeling of being powerful but chaotic in attack.
And look at where he goes and get the ball again. No 9. Look at where he stays once again. You already have 1, 2, 3, 4 players. You don't need to go there. Stay in the middle. But because he likes to go on the left, just like Vinícius, have a look. What's going to go? Camavinga now is your most advanced player. You don't want that, really. But again, now you're here. Try to stay in and around the box. Let them cook. Try to stay there. He likes to stay under. Stay with him. Ball is going to go on the side now. Make a run. Tap in.
Big questions as to whether or not Vini and Mbappe can play together. Vini had his best spell when Mbappe was out.
I mean, I agree. We've seen Vini not be at his top level when Mbappe's in the lineup. They both want to shift, like you mentioned, they both want to shift to that left side. There's only enough space for one of them on that side. And when you're out of that position, don't feel as comfortable, Vinny is clearly struggling with that. And I think that's just part of the issue. The team is going to struggle back from the midfield as well.
And when you put all these pieces together, the question is no longer just that they are playing poorly, but why these problems keep repeating. Are Real Madrid creating chances or simply waiting for them? When everything repeats like a loop, it is no longer just about tactics, but the result of a deeper structural issue. Everything has a very specific cause. When Toni Kroos left without a direct replacement, they did not just lose a passer, they lost the central controller of the entire system. He was the one who decided when to accelerate, when to slow the tempo, and when to keep possession to suffocate the game.
Una pregunta, madridistas. La temporada que viene, o por lo menos de momento, mi número 8 está libre. ¿Tenéis una idea? La verdad, para mí es un placer dar mi número a este chico, Fede Valverde.
Certainly he will bring so much balance to this team, structure, control with the ball, controlling the tempo, controlling a lot of things that right now Toni Kroos, or he provided when he was there. And I think that has an impact on everything, the defense, the manager, the forwards, Kylian. And unless they find somebody like him, or a way of doing what he used to do with other people, I don't know, 2 guys if you want. But I just don't think they will get anywhere because they will keep being exposed. They will keep not moving the ball well. They will keep not being able to control anything. And I think that's they don't.
The successor to Madrid's number 8 shirt, Federico Valverde, the player trusted by Kroos himself, has not been able to replace him or replicate what he did. In a season where the squad has been heavily affected by injuries to key players, Valverde has had to fill in the gaps across the team. At times, he has even been deployed as a right back. Of course, Valverde has still delivered standout performances to help Real Madrid win important matches, especially in clashes against Manchester City in the Champions League. But based on what he has shown so far, it is not even close to Kroos. Real Madrid's squad building, centred around big names, has led to pieces that no longer complement each other, creating an imbalanced team. Power in the dressing room leans toward the players, leaving the coach with little ability to impose structure. Real Madrid have too many runners, too many high energy and explosive players, but they lack control. They lack a brain to connect everything together.
For me, one of the big problems, or the big problem from Real Madrid, not now, this season, is they don't have leadership. They don't have leaders in that dressing room. Not at all. I think they miss some players like that. And the individual mistakes. So you need to give your 200% to be able to win matches, because it's not enough what they are doing right now. That is the truth.
Bringing in Kylian Mbappé is an upgrade on an individual level, but from a system perspective, it is an incomplete addition because the team has not been adjusted to absorb his presence. When a major piece is added while the overall picture remains unchanged, imbalance becomes inevitable. Xabi Alonso is a system-oriented coach who emphasises structure, positioning and tactical discipline, but he walked into a dressing room that operates on the exact opposite logic, where individual inspiration and player power carry more weight. This is no longer a matter of tactics being right or wrong, but a complete clash of philosophies, and that clash lasted only 6 months.
Breaking news out of La Liga, where Real Madrid has agreed to mutually part ways with first-team coach Xabi Alonso.
Has Real Madrid improved? Has Xabi Alonso reached close to 100% of how he wants to leave his stamp on Real Madrid? No. So this mutually agreed to part ways, I'm not sure I buy it, because this is a man who you would want to center a project around. It's going to take some time, just that Real Madrid isn't the same thing as Bayer Leverkusen, where you do have time to build a project around. Questions here or there about who had the power, who was the one really making the calls, and the direction of this project.
After that crisis, at a moment few expected, the departure of Xabi Alonso forced Real Madrid to promote Álvaro Arbeloa from the youth team as a temporary solution. To some extent, he has brought back a degree of stability, with clearer playing patterns, better organisation, and most importantly, a reduction in chaos.
Real Madrid right now, the way they're set up with Mbappe, Vinícius, Júnior, Jude Bellingham, they can be a very, very good counter-attacking team, a very strong counter-attacking team. Lads, when you coach Real Madrid, being able to connect with players, I think, is more of what is necessary at Real Madrid. And the way Real Madrid has always been is a team full of big stars, big names, and they win the way they have to win. The Real Madrid DNA, whether it's a possession football, a counter-attacking football, whatever it has to take, they find a way to win. Real Madrid DNA.
But that is only the surface. Arbeloa has not truly solved these structural issues. He has only made the current system easier to operate. The reality on the pitch reflects this clearly. The pressing is more organised, but not dominant enough. The build-up is cleaner, but lacks creativity. As a result, performances still fluctuate and lack consistency. Real Madrid are no longer completely chaotic, but they have never truly been in control either. They exist in an in-between state, transitioning from chaos into controlled chaos. All of this cannot be separated from the club's power structure. Under Florentino Pérez, the priority given to superstars and image remains the guiding principle, and this inevitably shapes how the team is built. When the structure has to serve individuals, instead of individuals serving the structure, a cycle begins to form. A tactically oriented coach is appointed, the players do not fully adapt. Results decline, the coach is replaced, and the cycle starts all over again. History, trophies, and those absurd Champions League nights have created an almost default perception whatever happens to them will always be interpreted as for a reason, even when the on-pitch issues have existed for a long time. Because of that, for years, the way Real Madrid actually played and the way people talked about them did not truly align. What makes this period notable is that those two things are finally starting to converge. When the structure on the pitch is not good enough, results are no longer saved by those familiar moments. Better organised, more disciplined, and more effective pressing teams are gaining the upper hand. It creates the sense that football is returning to its true nature, where the system defines a team's performance ceiling. The clearest contrast can be seen in PSG, when they moved away from a superstar-centred model and shifted toward a structurally coherent collective. Everything became more fluid. Their pressing became synchronised, roles were clearly defined, and build-up play no longer depended on individual inspiration. The team operates like a complete mechanism, where every piece serves the whole system. This not only helps them control matches better, but also makes their performance more consistent over time. If you still haven't known how good PSG are, I have something really special for you at the top right corner. Click it. Once the problem is clearly identified as structural, Real Madrid's solution is no longer vague, but comes down to very specific decisions. They need a tempo controller to replace the role left by Toni Kroos and regain control of matches. At the same time, separating the roles of Kylian Mbappé and Vinícius Júnior is essential to solve spatial issues, before rebuilding a pressing system that is clear enough to allow them to play proactively. From this foundation, a more defined pressing structure must be developed so they can dictate games instead of constantly reacting to them. However, tactical adjustments cannot be sustained without changes in power dynamics. Real Madrid need to re-establish order in the dressing room, where the coach has enough authority to impose ideas and maintain tactical discipline. At that point, a bigger question emerges. Do they want to become a team that controls matches, or continue relying on moments? In that context, the future of Arbeloa becomes crucial. If they keep him, they must build a complete system around his philosophy. If not, they need a decisive change instead of continuing in this half-measured state. Therefore, Real Madrid's problem is not a lack of talent, but how that talent is organised. More dangerously, they are still delaying the decision to fix it. When everything is this clear, what remains is no longer analysis, but choice. Is this the true exposure of Real Madrid, or just the beginning of yet another familiar comeback? If you enjoy our video, don't forget to hit like to help this video reach to other football lovers, and hit the subscribe button to follow for more interesting videos about football stories. See you in the next video.